Welcome to the Boston Art Podcast,
Boston's premier art podcast,
where we talk art, culture, and philosophy.
I'm Brian Huntress.
And I'm Theodora Earthworms.
Here is the show.
So what I noticed, like, right off the bat with this place that I think... Well, I guess I'll say what is immediately interesting about this room to me is I grew up in Rockland on the South Shore, if you're familiar, and historically Rockland and the surrounding towns through the 1800s were home to just countless shoe factories. You know what I mean? Just those, the super tall, like 5-floor wood buildings. And all around in Town Hall and those buildings, which are art buildings now, were little things like this. I don't know what you would call that. Lasts?
These things?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're called shoe or boot lasts.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is just so fascinating because we've talked about or like joked about like I skateboard, so my shoes are always like ruined and destroyed. So we've joked about like I should learn how to mend shoes or like make them or something or like I don't know. So it's I don't know. I feel like this is like so. You're the first person I've ever met that actually does this.
Yeah, it's pretty rare now, but like it used to be everywhere in Massachusetts, and like the weird part is I didn't learn that until after I was doing that.
That's incredible.
So, and then I'm like obsessed with finding out more and more stories. Whenever it's too cold to work in here in the winter, I go to like the Lynn Library and just stick in shoemaker and then learn all kinds of cool things or whatever. And,
so yeah, to discuss like where we are, just in like we are in your yard and a beautiful small workspace studio, not attached to the house. I don't know how you would describe it structurally.
Detached, with no windows.
There's
facing
a
the house.
a garden, a beautiful yard. There's plants and a tree growing through the little porch and steps here, and everything is wood. Like this is just such a beautiful, picturesque. It's very serene. Like this is just such a beautiful space you're working in.
So these are, you don't have to move. These are like what those old buildings used to look like, and they used to be in every neighborhood, like hundreds of them.
Oh yeah, could you tell us a little bit about? You were talking about that earlier. I didn't understand.
So they were called 10-footers, and they were generally like 12 by 12, but this is 11 by 14. So that just gives you some. But like 6 guys would work in these buildings. Oh, wow.
in a spot like this.
Yeah, and then so they use these kind of old-fashioned benches. They're called bursts. You know, the shoemaker bench that people make coffee tables out of now.
Oh wow,
like coffee rings. But,
oh no shit!
But,
yeah, that literally was a coffee table.
But you would sit like by the windows and like front to back, and then these guys would rent a space, sort of like barbers rent a space. So it might not even be one shoemaker that owned the building. Like somebody who owned the house might own the building, but they were everywhere, and that was, a small period of time before big mill buildings and factories came to be. But some of the towns still have these random, like Natick has one, Georgetown, Lynn, Stoneham, where they renovate them and have them as display pieces. But I just thought they were so cool when I started looking into it that I was just working out of my basement like every other artist that can't afford studio space.
Sure, yeah.
And then, so my husband was like, I'll build you a little shop. And I was like, model it after these.
Yeah.
And then I was an architect, and I was like, I don't want to have any input on it. I just want to come into whatever you build and adapt it. And so, like, all the windows and stuff are old, from old jobs that he took out. And
that's so cool.
That is
I'm waiting
so
for
amazing.
more windows up there whenever he gets some transoms.
So we're those the 10-footers were usually. Were those used in like the 1700s? You said, or
late 1700s up until like 1860s. That's when they really started, moving as there was more machines and mechanizations. They started like first they had these buildings that looked like 2-story houses, like just a regular gabled house. That was sort of the middle ground, and then it was the big brick mill buildings.
Wow!
What an incredible thing! And I guess maybe we should double back a little bit and. Talk about who you are and what we're talking about. Like, what is your business? Or, like, what are we doing here?
So, my name is Sarah Guerin. My artist name is Saboteuse, and I am a bootmaker and an artist. So, I started out in art and then did many, many things until eventually I found myself here.
So, could you talk about, like, maybe the beginnings of like, a process? Like, maybe... Because there's probably, like, I imagine you probably make some boots maybe as personal projects or for fun. And
sometimes.
And then there's probably also a lot that are commissions, you said?
Yes. So it's a mix of that, and then also art pieces that I make with the skills of bootmaking, because they're really, they're craft skills that are labor intensive and take a really long time to learn and do well. So as I got better at it, I started really like finishing projects. It was funny, I was listening to one of your things about taking a long time. Like some of the things I've worked on slowly over 20 years and was just like waiting until I was adept at this or learned what I wanted to do in order to solve this part, and then I would go back into it, and it's good. It feels good. So.
How long does it usually take to make a pair of boots?
So it depends on the complexity of the decorative stuff, because I make cowboy boots, so the tops, the shafts can be really decorative. But like a straightforward pair of boots with not much decoration on it would probably be 80 hours, but I don't do it all at once, so I give a year deadline from when you hire me, but I usually do them within like 8 or 9 months, because they're kind of staggered, the different projects. And I do take care of my kids full time, so this is like 3/4 time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So with the like decorative element and stuff, that must be a lot of labor altogether.
That's the best part, almost. Yeah. I mean, for the client work, it comes like from discussions. We talk about like usually people have something in mind about what they want, or and then I do like very similar to art. So I went to art school, like very similar to that, process oriented. Like I'll do lots of trial and error stuff. I'm much more 3D than 2D, and will then present it like, here's what I want to show you that I could do, or I discovered through trying new things, and then we refine it a little bit. So it's really great because it's kind of collaborative in the end. Like I wouldn't, really when I'm all on my own doing whatever, I don't have that structure to rein me in.
Yeah. So you can kind of get the client's input, make sure they're happy with it.
Yeah. And then some of the things just get better that way. Yeah. I haven't yet found it where it was a disappointing process. Not yet. But
I have like a billion questions that I like all running through my head. So when I feel like I want to maybe talk about I guess with any project, whether it was maybe if it was a commission or if it was client work or it was personal, maybe specifically with a pair of boots, where is the first place you start? Like, are you drawing? Are you maybe researching the different designs, or so you're holding? And what is that called again? The last. The last. Is it with a K?
LAST.
Okay.
Yeah, lost if you're in England. I went to a shoemaking school for a while in England, and I was the only American in there, and the 5th week into it, the word lost came out of my mouth. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not making fun of anyone. Like, it just came out because they say it so much. You really. This is the negative space inside a shoe. So any shoe design, like a sneaker last will look different. This is a cowboy boot last. A shoe last looks different, and that's a design base. I guess it's like the canvas, like what the pattern construction comes out of it. This is taped right now, and I'll make the patterns, sort of like dress patterns from that once I draw on the things I want to do. So there's no easy answer to that, because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on all at the same time.
Gotcha.
There's the pattern making, and then I make cowboy boots, so it's a very standard type of construction with 4 pieces. So that's its own type of constriction, I guess, in design. Like it's that canvas, so I know that starting out. But if I were making other kinds of footwear, that would be a little bit more well, I guess different, like, because an Oxford's going to look different than a Chelsea boot or something like that. So that you have in mind, and your last is going to reflect that. Like, what you wouldn't make a sneaker on this last. Like, you couldn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The heel height set, the shape is set in relation to where your bones and your feet are, and how your foot moves in motion as you walk.
So with the pair of cowboy boots, or just with anything, it definitely would really. So the I feel like maybe the actual structural, like almost the architecture of the shoe is first, probably before the aesthetics. Right. Gotcha.
So some things are pure aesthetics in all footwear, but in a cowboy boot it would be the toe shape, everything past the knuckle of your big toe or your middle toe, whichever is longer, is just aesthetic. So you could have that big wide square, or the really
like a
pointy,
big point,
like that's none of that is affected by the design, the actual structural design. Heel height, that like that boot there is a walking boot, so it's got a really low heel. It's called a roper. The higher heels kind of developed over time for riding horses and grabbing the stirrup. And that's one of the things I liked. I kind of stumbled into cowboy boot world, but I liked that everything about it was functional. It seemed really authentic. Like nothing about it is Yet you have the super decorative
Yeah.
part that's like could be wildly outrageous, but nothing about the actual design of the pattern of the footwear piece is inauthentic. Like everything's functional and came
Yeah.
about for a reason and then never changed. It's really awesome.
That is
way.
really cool. So when you're saying it relates a lot to like 3D artwork, it's
Yeah.
like you're starting almost with an armature and then
Yes.
adding the decorative element after you've done the functionality.
Yep.
Or addressed the functionality.
Yeah.
I also really love, like, because, like, I'm looking at some of the drawings that it looks over there, like a drafting station, and it looks like, with a lot of the drawings, so the heel and the foot and, like, the base of it are probably very 3D and structural and stuff, but it looks like a lot of boots would have, like, maybe floral patterns or different, like, would you call it embossing and leather and things like that?
Those are inlay and overlay patterns, so that's my
Okay.
least favorite part is doing
You don't
drawing.
like those?
No.
Oh.
I love the boots and I love the designs, and all three of those boots have been for the same client, and she's a really ideal client. But the drawing, the picture of it is my least favorite part.
Right.
Because I do all those things, like I said, I give her, I'm doing another
Oh,
that
wow.
pair
that's
right now, so I
beautiful.
give her stuff like this, and this was my trial piece. Like I had come to this through playing around with a bunch of things,
Yeah.
and then she's like, "That's great, but what does it look like on the boot?" And then I literally have to do like a representative
rendering.
cheesy rendering, and it's like torture me, forcing myself to sit down. It's like, okay, I can't go to the bathroom until I've done, like I make
Yeah.
rules for myself to crank that out, and then of course that's the easiest way for many people to access the ideas. And,
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
really visualize
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
So how does the leather working start? Is that like different? Is it paint? Is there a lot of stitching involved, or?
There's a lot of stitching. I mean, there are different techniques and things that I've just learned as I go, sort of. This stuff is kind of classic overlay, but then I took a crust leather, which is an undyed, it's like partially dyed, partially tanned leather, but it doesn't have that final finish on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then these dyes have waxes and products in them that seal and finish the leather. So I have different colored dyes, so all that stuff is from those dye
Wow.
systems. So then
Cool.
when you do them, like I've been working on those this week. So these were the development of these flowers.
Wow. So because for the people, obviously this isn't a visual show, but we're looking at I don't know what type of flower, but like a beautiful
Tiger lily.
a beautiful like red, very well rendered tiger lily made on leather with dyes, and are the little
And then that's embroidered. Yeah.
and they're like the part. Wow,
Yeah.
that is gorgeous. That is really
Thanks.
beautiful work.
Thank you.
I love that a lot. Like,
I like this shows well like how it changed just a little bit, but significantly with her input. So when I showed her that, she was like, "Well, I want a more delicate flower, and I want." So that ended up being here's the one. Just a different rendering, but it's a totally different feel because
Yeah.
they're thinner flowers and they're she wanted bolder rather than the red, like more contrast and.
yeah.
I don't know. I like them more, and people feel good seeing them, and that always feels good when
Yeah,
you're
of course.
making anything.
Because these people are going to be walking around in them, and I've never owned a pair of cowboy boots specifically, but I've seen in some stores like retail, like a stock pair of boots, they get pretty expensive, don't they? With the
They do, and that's those. If you've seen it in a store, it's a factory boot. So even like an
Yeah.
expensive factory boot would be anywhere from like $600 to thousands, and then these are. Because they're handmade, bespoke boots that are made to your feet and are going to fit your feet perfectly, they would start at like 3,000. So it's a different thing
That's
altogether,
awesome.
but they're a
Yeah.
totally different thing altogether too. They're like every material in them down to the insole
It's
is
literally
deliberate,
made,
and
yeah.
I can track the provenance, which is really
That is
important
so
to
fucking
me
cool.
as a maker, and they would last forever. You literally would never need to buy another pair of shoes. Like people
That's
would,
incredible.
but and their design, the design of shoes, which used to be like old 10-footer shoemakers, all shoes were made this way, are made to be repaired. So you can resole them and re-heel them
Wow.
easily because of the design of how they're built. So it I could talk to the end of time about keeping shoes out of landfills, but
Yeah, please
Yeah.
do.
oh yeah, is there an environmental aspect to what you do?
Oh,
could you
absolutely.
tell us a little bit about that? That sounds really exciting.
well, there's millions. I mean, like 70 million pair of shoes made every single day in the
Holy
world.
shit.
And those are all going to end up in landfills pretty quickly just by nature of design, because they're designed to fall apart.
Yeah.
And cobblers can repair like some shoes a little bit over time, but they're really like even just the materials involved. Like if you bought nice shoes that are still kind of factory made, the parts that you don't see are the parts that are going to fall apart, and that's really the structure and foundation of the shoe. There's probably bees and stuff in here.
That's okay.
Yeah, and even if like you were to replace parts of a shoe or whatever, I don't know the exact terminology, but there's still waste involved.
Yeah.
Like, and at what point, it's kind of like that philosophical question of like, if I forget what it is exactly, but like if you have a house and you replace every single piece of the house, is it the same house?
Yeah,
It's just like,
who knows?
But even still, there's still a house's worth of waste. You know what I mean? But yeah, I've never even considered the fact that you could have a shoe that would literally last forever.
And I've heard I listened to different people speak on footwear because there's sustainability movements in the footwear industry, and obviously a price point to the kind of footwear that I do that's just not accessible to most people. But there's unless they were burned, probably every pair of shoes you've ever owned still exists somewhere in a pile.
Wow.
And when I heard the guy say that, it was like this eye-opening.
It's really kind of creepy.
And then, of course, like I wear, flip-flops, but then I bought these from Tidal in New York because they made them in New York out of recycled materials. And you try to do the best, I try to do the best I can all the time, and that's all you can ask of anybody. There's no, super harsh judgment.
Sure.
But it's something like, I don't know, I feel like it's part of my artwork as well, like thinking about that stuff all the time and thinking like how. So I've been trying to. I live off of grants too, art grants. Finally, after years and years of applying, like they've started to come in the last 2 years, and I'm sort of moving my art practice towards wanting to do like craft in public as performance art in order to educate people about this part of it. Yeah. Like if everybody starts just going away thinking like about their shoes a little differently or what they choose to put on their feet, then the power of art, I suppose, is successful. Like and because nobody knows how shoes are made anymore.
I know, I didn't know any of this at all. And it's so interesting because we've talked about it a lot recently. We might have talked about it on the podcast, actually, but Brian goes through a pair of shoes every 2 months because of skateboarding. Like the ones you're wearing right now, you've repaired on your own.
Do you like my repair? I just put glue all over that one part.
The funny part, so my sons do like a million things, but one of them scooters a lot, so he ends up getting that hole right here.
Right.
Yeah.
But this bump in the rubber always bothered me, like growing up, and I'd see them, I'm like, why couldn't they like shape that down or something? And then when I had started seeing my son's shoes wear there, that was a deliberate design decision because it wears away so much there. That rubber like pops out a little there, and I'm like,
that
it's
actually
so
makes
smart.
sense.
Like,
because your bump is almost gone.
Yeah, and yours is almost gone.
Yeah, and for the viewer, we're talking about a pretty standard bullshit pair of Vans.
That we got like a month ago.
Yeah, that I just
but all that
burned
style
right
of
through.
shoe has that, like that. It's that rubber like glued or adhered onto the other strip of rubber that went around the back, and
like a little bumper almost.
Yeah, and normally you skive when you have any kind of overlay. You don't have shoes that have it, but if there's any kind of overlay, you would skive it so that it's nice and smooth and you don't have the double thickness. So that's why it always bothered me. I'm like, they're so lazy. They're not doing that extra step. And then when I found out it was functional, just by experience.
See, I didn't even know that was
a
functional aspect
thrilling.
of it.
This is what makes
so
life
cool.
worth living.
So I have to ask too, because a lot of our listeners, we suspect, are maybe either not professional artists, or maybe there even could be people starting out, or people that don't know a lot about different, I guess, like kind of almost like bureaucratic things with the art world. And I know, and talking about grants, I think is like an especially kind of shadowy, not nefarious, but just really like nobody know, like what the hell, what is a grant? How do you even, who is the arbiter of what grants exist and don't, and like whose money is it? Like, how the hell does that work? Like, because that's amazing. I think it's beautiful that you're making these fucking amazing boots. Oh yeah, no, I don't fucking know either.
I feel like I figured out a lot over years of just doing it, and then like each one is almost like I'm sure I'm going to get one because it's so spot on, and then I don't. And some of the places will like let you come and they'll tell you exactly why. And I've learned more from that than anything else in ways that are really helpful to me in my practice, like whether or not it's a grant. Yeah. And then I work alone here. I hate working alone. I wish. I mean, I have this wonderful space, and I wish like 4 people worked in here with me. I like talking and exactly. and you learn things from when other people are doing other work and stuff. I found that the best part of sharing studio space was like some guy doing watercolor that I know nothing about. Years later, some little thing he was talking about helped me figure out a problem on something I was working at. I'm like, I'm missing all those things now.
Yeah, the collaborative kind of.
But when I write the grants, it's like I problem solve by speaking, so it's doing that in a way, you know, as I try to articulate what I want to do or what I'm figuring out, and it's hard to stress process to people that don't understand that.
Yeah.
It helps writing these grants like over and over and over because I could see them evolve. So now when I look back at ones that I didn't get, I'm like, oh, that's so terrible. It doesn't say at all what I was trying to say. But so it's helpful more in that sense. Of course, the money's awesome because I was living week to week until some of the grants started coming in.
That's
and
great.
It's like a whole, and I played off for 25 years as student mom. So.
Yeah.
Oh, holy shit!
In December, so it's like a whole new world.
Right, and you said you had a fine arts degree, or was it?
Yeah, and
you studied
and in architecture.
Oh, in architecture. Wow,
yeah.
cool. Did you happen to go to Wentworth?
No.
Oh, okay. My sister is an architect, and she went to Wentworth.
Yeah,
actually,
they have a great architecture program.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm thinking of too is I notice up here you have these 3 ribbons, 2 for first place, 1 second.
Yeah.
So, and like, which kind of makes me wonder now, like, there must be.
It's from the World Leather debut.
Yeah, the World Leather debut. Where was that?
That was in Boston? Sheridan, Wyoming. It had nothing to do with the gay leather scene, which often gets mistaken for.
Is there any overlap?
I don't know, because I've never gone. I send my stuff there. I haven't had enough money to travel.
Which tells me in my mind there must be a national leather and bootmaking community.
Yes.
There are probably famous or very prominent artisan boot creators.
Yes.
That's fucking. Could you? Okay, so that I think is really exciting to me. How did you find out about the World Leather debut? How long has that been going? Does that say 16?
It's been going 20 years or something, but the first time I participated, I think, was like 2016 or 17, around there.
Wow.
I don't know how I first found out about it. I don't remember. That stinks.
So
this has been the number one good thing for me from Instagram is finding that
just
community
connecting
because I'm not connected to it, and then a lot of those bootmakers are. Yeah, I think land is so big outside of New England that they're not close geographically, but they're closer and they gather a couple times a year, and I've never been able to do that. But at least I am part of that community now through Instagram, and just to the point where like we message and I ask for help from different people, and the techniques we post and things are great. So it wasn't. I was hoping when I joined that it would bring about clients or something, but it's really instead brought this boot and shoemaking community to me, which is wonderful, but different than what I was looking for. So.
That must be valuable in its own right, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Are there a lot of differences in, like, because when you make cowboy boots, I feel like when you pictured, like, the community of people that do that, New England isn't the first thing that comes to mind. You think, like, Arizona, Nevada, something like that.
Yeah, Texas, Colorado. And
are there, like, differences in the styles based on
region? Like regional differences.
I think there are, and then I can't speak to them in detail because I think that even in Texas that there are different styles in places. But I learned from a bootmaker who moved to Massachusetts from Colorado, and he made like rancher work boots mostly in Colorado. But then when he worked here, his work got much more decorative because that's what Boston clients had more money, and that's what they wanted. Like they weren't working functional boots anymore.
Yeah, because the only reason I even knew that stock boots were expensive is because I've traveled a lot, and going through rural areas, you occasionally come across like boot outlets or something, or like, I don't know, like Tractor Supply type places that sell cowboy boots a lot. So do you think that it's much more popular out there? Could be probably historically, but could it also have something to do with like just the utilitarian element?
Yeah,
like people are wearing them because...
And I think that the people who are actual professional ranchers or cowboys, or that they do buy something that then can be repaired over and over again, rather than like breaking in a new pair of boots that's going to fall apart.
Right.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I bet
it's a tool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a tool to their job.
Yeah, because a stock boot too. Do you think maybe like something like, because there's probably almost like a talking about like how the shit that we buy every day, clothes and shoes, we go through them so fast they end up in landfills. That's probably the same with like a stock cowboy boot or something that these people are just going. If somebody weren't able to afford custom ones that were actually like made and created and with that much depth, they'd probably be going through them pretty fast. I don't know. I have no idea.
I think so. And then just from what I've seen, again, it's been all through the internet. But talking to bootmakers who then talk about, like, most of the bootmakers that I know grew up in that culture, so they had some kind of, real exposure to it that may not have been from the maker side, but they have bootmaking or boot culture in their lives.
Yeah.
Talk about stuff like that. Yes, like maybe a rancher doesn't have, or a ranch hand doesn't have a ton of money, but that would be a given that if you spent this much money in the beginning, then you're only gonna resole over and over, or patch where the, like where your shoe wore out,
right?
Like where those bend, that can crack, but you can repair that in a way, or they'd have sideliners where stock boots wouldn't. So
like investing in a reliable car you can trade parts out for. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll probably talk about boots so much more, but I would also like to know how, like, because you're an artist and you're doing this, but what did art look like for you in the beginning? Like maybe growing up, like did you like what drew you towards creating and being expressive in general?
I think I'm one of those people that has to make something every day, like constantly. So I knit now, but I didn't knit when I was growing up. But that gives me like something to keep my hands busy with every day. And so when I was growing up, I drew all the time, and then discovered, mostly going to art school, that was my least favorite part, but I didn't know that growing up. So as a kid, like you draw all the time, and I grew up in Swampscott, which is a really small town, and we had like one art class, and it was great, and those were my peeps, but we had like 5 of us in there just doing whatever, mostly drawing, pen and ink, and that kind of stuff. Maybe we had the one clay project during the year or whatever, but so I drew and drew all the time, to the point where I had carpal tunnel surgery when I was 17 because I held my pens and pencils so much, and I just drew all the time.
That's absolutely incredible,
which has been awesome, because then I haven't had it all this time.
Get it out of the way early.
Then I'm really tough on my hands. I try to take care of them, but I'm still tough on them.
Yeah. So how did you go from like drawing to architecture and then to bootmaking?
Or maybe we could talk about drawing to architecture. Like, how did you get there?
Then
bootmaking.
I was very resistant to the idea of being an artist. I really thought that that's not something viable that you do. I didn't know any professional artists. My mom really pushed me to go to art school. She just kept saying, like, this is where I think you should be. And
was she an artist?
No. But she just knows me well.
Yeah, that's cool.
My mom's American, my dad's from France, and I definitely think, like, that part of me comes from my dad's side. And he always liked to, like, oil paint and fiddle around, and he's a tool and die maker, so he's very hands-on, too.
Tool
and die maker? So people
it's
that
like a machinist.
It's like a machine. So he worked as a machinist at GE, but he'd been trained in France as a tool and die maker, which he is very adamant saying they're different because it's higher than machine.
Interesting.
But it's like basically they make the machines that machinists use.
Wow.
Like that's what they're trained in doing. So he worked at GE doing the airplane engine parts, and would basically be the one who like fixed everything that anybody else messed up, or fixed the tools, and could make the parts that they needed for things. So yeah, he's super cool and hands on. My mom is too, but my mom's like smart and articulate and has different strengths.
Of course, yeah.
But she just kept saying, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, and I was like, and I applied to a bunch of schools and got in, and then we went to some and didn't get into others, but then when we did the tours, like I went to RISD, and when I got there, I was like, this is where I want to be, I love this, and they were like, that's way too expensive, you can't we can't afford it, and you got no aid, and so I was just going to go 1 year, like take out all the loans to just go 1 year. And it's like a crazy story, but at the very end of that first year, and then I worked like 100 hours a week and didn't party and didn't like do anything except make, because I was going to be there such a short time, and I wanted to absorb everything I could.
Yeah.
And they made a mistake in their financial aid office and gave me the scholarship of a woman whose name is Sarah Guerin.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like so crazy random story. And then they quickly realized their mistake when she didn't get her money and was like calling. And then they were like, well, because we like already put it in your account and stuff, you'll get it, but just this 1 year.
So you got another year.
So I got one more year, and then I became an RA, and I took out more loans, and I had like 4 jobs while I worked there. So I was able to stay and do it just because of that one mistake.
That's incredible.
Is that
And
just good luck or
crazy good luck?
total
'Cause-
fate?
I don't
Meant
know.
to be.
Because I never thought about that problem that people have if they have to leave school after they've taken a lot of loans, and then you don't have a degree or haven't learned all the other stuff that you could have learned. And I was just incredibly lucky in that way. But I did architecture because it just seemed like that's a real job.
Yeah.
But I, like, within second semester of architecture, like, I absolutely don't want to do this. But but it was so broad, like, RISD's so kind of out there that it just, I do what I learned every single day on this stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There almost seems to be an element of like reckless abandon too with your education, like with it being so expensive and being like, fuck it, I got 1 year, I'm gonna just do everything. Like, what did your day-to-day look like? Were you
I can't think farther ahead than 2 weeks. Like, even now, I'm in my 40s, and I still, like, this has been a problem my like whole life, but it's also just the way I am, so it's not concrete. I had no idea that I was signing up for 25
You were
years of
just
debt
like,
and what that would
this
mean.
is
I always am
focusing on
like,
what's
this
in
is
front
what
of
I
me.
want to do, and this is what I'm doing, and I find a way to make it happen. And
It seems like a skill, though. It seems like it worked
An
out,
asset.
right?
it does. I mean, there's difficult parts to it along the way,
Yeah.
but I guess it's part of, the cost of getting what you want to do. And
Yeah.
How did you keep yourself in that workflow? Because I think a lot of people too, going to college, especially in that maybe first year, 18, 19, 20, a lot of people I feel like struggle with work ethic. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
don't
where did you?
I struggle with other things. I don't struggle with that. I struggle the other way, like how not to work every minute all
Yeah.
the time. But I'm fulfilled by it, and then I kind of go too far, and I've done too much stuff. It's actually been good in a way having my family, because I have had to find a balance in a way that I didn't resent one or the other. Like figure out stuff to do where I didn't resent the time that my children need and my household needs, but still be making the things that fulfill me. So, like, even this is like a dumb example, but it's a very real example. This stuff I got all
flowers.
set so that I could be hand embroidering while my son has his baseball tryouts or playoffs, because like I need something to take with me there so that I can do and keep being productive. But so like a lot of my work I plan in a way that I can
Kind of
transport it or have like, no, I'll be home these days, so then I can do the things that need to be done here. But they always come first, so then I always have to be ready to go and not be mad about leaving something. So I'll have like things that, I'll take that with me if I have to go do whatever. And
That's so interesting.
it's more successful sometimes than others, but
Yeah.
but it's been good, because otherwise I'd be working all the time just without stop, especially when you live where you work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, can't get away from it, don't want to, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
I have that discussion with other shoemakers too, because a lot of them work just in their homes, and it's a problem for all of us because we work in isolation and there's always something to do.
Yeah.
So when do you stop?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. Did you have a question just now?
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, it kind of reminds me
Oh, sure. Thank you.
of some of the discussions a lot of people were having throughout COVID and the initial quarantine, where so many people were taking up new hobbies or really delving into their art in their home space instead of in a studio or workplace and stuff, and so many people were having such a difficult time with that blend.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I was getting to that point right like December before the pandemic happened. Like, I can't bear working alone anymore. So it was like I was really struggling with it, and I needed human interaction. It wasn't being a hockey parent. I needed to get out and be around people in my creative context. And so I actually got the artist in residence at the Society of Arts and Crafts, and was supposed to move my studio to the Seaport, and then that all shut down.
Wow.
And it was so devastating. Like, I had the whole shop packed up and ready to go, except for that
God.
thing. And it was just so
Shit.
devastating. But then, in the end, like, none of us had any idea what was coming. And then it ended up being the absolute perfect circumstance to have, like, this great studio. You're trapped in a house with 5 people and need to get away from each other, and I actually physically could get away and still be creative. And that year was really good for me in this context. And that's the first year I got some grants and the PUA stuff that had never applied to anybody like me before. It was in that way it was really great. And so it wasn't I wasn't struggling in the way that some people then found themselves, whereas I had just been. That was really hard. It took several months to accept that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But in those times, I was busy out here. And grants helped. Like, one of the grants, I'll tell you, like, to your question before, I just apply to anything and everything that comes across my path. Like, even if it just sounds wacky and out there. And somebody in the Cultural Council in Salem sent me a thing saying, apply to this Art at a Distance grant in Boston, and just like spreading the word to artists. And I applied for that, and these tall things came out of that experience.
Oh, those boots! Those are large boots.
They're size 22. Oh my gosh! But I got paired with Mercabelli, who's like a graffiti artist, muralist, painter in Quincy.
Oh wow!
And we the parameters for this grant were that two artists who do totally different things were paired, and you have to make something together, but you can never work together. So we were literally like shuttling pieces back and forth between. He's got the other one. And,
that is so cool.
And it was like totally different. Like, I was the only bootmaker in that group, and it was awesome. And it's not something in regular life that you're out looking for, but it, like, I saw it, it's open, and I applied to it. And I applied to so many things like that 90% of don't come to anything, but then when they do, that was a huge turning point in, like, emotional attitude that was in June, because it was what I had been looking for, wanting to go to Boston, but then in a totally different way.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like a pattern we've been noticing with our interviews is that there are so many people that had that kind of arc creatively, where in the beginning of the pandemic, I remember I was concerned about it too as an artist, like, what's going to happen to the art world now? Like, where is all the collaboration going to come from? Like, what's going to happen when there's no shows? And it seems like so many people not only made the best of it, but actually discovered a whole different angle of their art, which a few people we've talked to have said that. And it's so interesting to think about now in retrospect.
And 2 pieces that I'd been working on for up to 20 years, I finished because I had time.
I'd
never had time before. I was
Holy shit.
driving to, hockey and soccer and swim team and everything so much, and that went away. So it was just this huge amount of time I realized but didn't realize was taking up hours in my days, and then I had that back. So I finished these pieces that were just really meaningful to me, and then one of them was super cathartic. It had come from like this horrible abusive workshop I had worked in 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I had been dealing with it like quietly, but I'd moved away and I have a totally different life, but then finishing this piece that had been slowly going on forever was just like it ended. It was cathartic. It was like, that's out, and
that's great.
I really didn't know that would happen. I would have finished it earlier.
Also, a lot of respect. My parents are to you, because my parents are also hockey parents. I played up until high school, and my brother played all the way through college. So definitely a unique.
It's
definitely a very specific type of family.
It is. It is.
No, that's awesome. I'm sorry.
I never quite fit in anywhere, and I don't really fit in there either.
With the hockey crowd.
But it's okay. My boys like to play.
Yeah, of course. Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no, sorry. I derailed that whole thing to make a hockey
Like, I also
point.
hockey.
Yeah, no, I don't play anymore, but oh my god.
What else
That's
can
so
I
cool.
show you? So do you want to see the cathartic pieces? 'Cause they're all
Yeah.
Oh, hell
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great.
So
I
I
would-
worked,
yeah,
I
'cause
worked in this model building shop, and the boss would like scream at us. He was just had anger issues and control issues.
You said it was a model building shop?
Yeah, it was an industrial model building shop. So we did mostly model trains for industrial designers. So not like model trains that you see at the Costume Fair, but like the high-end, like high-speed train models.
Yeah.
And then they had a very small architecture department where we did like malls and big buildings type
Okay.
stuff. But but yeah, I worked in this place, and it was like we had clear plastic trash bins, and we painted, and we weren't allowed to like get a spot of dirt on the trash bins. Like,
Oh,
so,
man.
like it was wacky. And then we all just lived in fear of being yelled at, or
Yeah.
he'd like come in and get mad at who knows what, and just explode and throw things against the wall, and everybody was like,
Oh my
working
gosh.
there.
What an
And
asshole.
It was
Jesus
horrible,
Christ.
just horrible. It's like my eye twitch just talking about it. But
Oh my god.
he wasn't always there, so then it was like this great bonding of
Yeah.
abuse victims. But we used lots of X-Acto blades, and I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with them because there was no policy for what to do with these X-Acto blades. So I just kept collecting them, and
Yeah.
I collected like hundreds and hundreds of them.
Wow.
And when I left, when I moved back home, this was in France. When I moved back here, I brought them all with me. It was like this weird relationship with these things, and
Yeah.
like hid them in the back of a drawer. And every once in a while, I'd look at them, and like it was just this weird relationship with them. But so I finally started doing things like sewing, my like processing stuff. I started sewing
wow.
things and like seeing what kind of
Holy
skin
shit.
stuff I could do out of them, and why, like what did that mean. And it was like this protective shark type skin. I could think about like
That
you know,
looks like grizzly.
when you're a kid and they say if you run your hand on shark skin you'll cut it one way. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true, but that was like a
How,
kid thing.
how would you describe the pattern? Because what we're looking at is like what it looks like. It could be like 100 old X-Acto blades, rusted and kind
Yep,
of worn.
so the X-Acto blades have a little hole at the top, which made them easily sewable, like sequins. So I would sew them on, but because they're long and flat, they ended up making this jagged, zigzaggy pattern, sort of like
It
a
almost
diamond
looks like,
pattern,
almost looks like dragon skin or scales.
or like Puritan windows.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because there's the X-Acto blades kind of shingled down and attached to like a leather. I don't know what you would call it. So how and would this be a piece of like an accessory? Would this be worn? The X-Acto thing?
I don't know. I didn't know then, but this was.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
And we're opening up a pair of boots.
Oh,
Holy
wow.
shit! Those are
So
That's what I
so.
ended up
Oh my
doing with
god.
them.
And those are. Is that an incredibly sharp pair of
Yes.
boots?
So I
feel
ran
like
out like halfway with the ones I had collected, and so I ended up buying more to finish. But they're boot shafts that are covered. They're cowboy boots, but then the shaft is covered with that skin of X-Acto blades, and then
Oh my
you know
god!
there's all kinds of things about like, to me, like boots protecting you from something, but at the same
Yeah.
time these boots are like they're super sharp. You can't wear them. You can't touch them really. I've cut the tops like several times when I moved them in.
And
And then I made this like anti-heel slide. So in a boot you have this smooth piece so your heel to slide in easily, but then I made it like all bumpy with a spine and like fish spiny.
it literally
Just-
looks like a spine.
So it's warning you not to go near them in some way, like by the function of sliding your heel. You know, I
They're
don't
like
know.
We don't normally
allegoric.
do this. I'm gonna take a video of this.
Could we
'Cause I
take a
feel
video?
like
Is
it'd
that
be awesome.
okay?
Yeah.
If that's
Oh yeah,
okay.
for the Instagram.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't
take
think
a.
we can describe
okay.
this with just audio.
Yeah, film
But-
it. Yeah,
so
so-
this is what we were just describing in the episode at 43 minutes. For anybody who hasn't listened yet.
When I made my
Look at
Side
this.
seam as if it
I
were-
want to touch it, but I obviously
Don't cut
know I
yourself.
should not
Yeah.
touch it.
It's so, for some reason I want to.
Yeah, so these to describe for the video are a pair of cowboy boots. Did you say sequined or in?
it's like sequins.
with
it's like
X-Acto
sewing
blades.
sequins on.
Yeah, made of
Holy
blades
shit.
of X-Acto knives.
But so doing this was the process itself was my cathartic experience because I did it with no protection, and I would do it super, super slowly and deliberately so as not to cut myself, because that's how it felt to work in that shop where you were
Yeah.
doing everything like hyper focused, trying not to get yelled at.
Wow.
So, do you feel like with any other projects, there's been a kind of allegoric or emotional motivation or kind of background to the boots with what you're doing? Because this seems like, without even knowing the story behind it, these seem really, really powerful. Just looking at them.
I don't think any of the boots have. I did this other piece, the one I had told you I had here last week, but then I took it up to Maine.
Yeah.
It's in this art and gender show.
Oh, cool.
So this piece they were less boot-like, they're art
Ooh.
pieces, but
Holy
they
shit.
had, the best part of them is the hand-stitched sole part of them. And these also took a really long time, slowly, to figure out, and they definitely are as loaded with issues as these are. But the boots, not so much. The boots that I've done, and they take forever too, so I have kind of a small portfolio of boots. I mean, it's significant, but it's still small. So
Wow. So would these, do you think in the future with these X-Acto or bladed boots, would these go in a show or an opening? Or
I hope so.
So these haven't been shown.
They haven't,
before.
because the Society of Arts and Crafts thing, they were also going to be in an exhibit there, and that it just all shut down.
Wow. So this is an exclusive
It has just sat in here
bladed
since.
boot.
But
These are gorgeous.
They're meaningful, so I hope
Yeah.
that they find the right place at some point.
So this might be like kind of a complicated question, probably, and it probably depends on a lot. But for one of your sculptural pieces that's sitting in a gallery that you spent this much time on, and if they were sitting in a gallery, do you have any idea what you would price something like this as if it was to a private collector?
These I do. I learned all about how to appraise
wonderful.
or how appraising works just because of these. So
That's cool.
They needed to be insured, and I really, really was worried about somebody cutting themselves. So I had written into the thing that I needed to install them,
Right.
and then have plexi around them because I don't want anybody to really be hurt by them.
That would probably be an insurance nightmare, right?
So I think so. But so I had to actually get them appraised at how much they would be, and then all the information that I provided was how I priced my boots. So it's like directly correlated to time and material costs. And so these came out to be, I think it was like $27,000 because of the time it took to sew the X-Acto blades on, basically. But then that had no artistic value. I learned that in appraisal art world, you also have this ascribed artistic value from other people. So that was with a zero artistic value appraisal, but it was the lowest amount in order to get insurance. And
so
that was my little, professional appraisal thing. Because otherwise, and it was a total learning experience, like talking to all these different insurance places. And
So that would be the minimum
yes.
that you would sell these for?
Yes.
Wow. That's so fucking cool.
So, like, from an insurance point of view, would the artistic value accrue as it's sold? Like, somebody would purchase it for more than that?
I don't know. I mean, I had pretty interesting discussions with the appraiser. It was a guy in JP, and he was telling me, like it's pretty straightforward if you're appraising, seascape paintings because there's a long
lineage.
Yes. Yeah. You're better with vocab than I.
I'm
like.
sorry.
I love listening to you on your podcast because I'm like, oh, I wish I used the word pedantic. No, it's wonderful. But there's just more a history of things in order to base it off of. And this is to me a real issue, even like applying for grants or just like relating to people, is like how to describe where these worlds meet. Like the craft of bootmaking, like just a regular straightforward boot, is so labor intensive and so complex. And it's the people who do it, we all know, and we know like our different qualities and who does what well, and admire it and aspire to different things, but it's like almost inaccessible to other people to understand that. And it sucks because it's like it's not in the art world, it's not really in the craft world, it's not it's kind of in apparel, but then apparel world is the worst possible world for it because it's very it's not well made. It's not so fashion. And I don't know, I'm fighting it every day. I want more people to know about it and more people to just be exposed to it. That's why I think I'd like to do this performance art thing, like
that would be so
work
cool.
for a week in like Nubian Square, and then work for a week in Newburyport, and work for a week somewhere. Like, just move your audience. So, a storefront idea, but with an uncurated audience, I think would be ideal. You just have to figure out how to do that, and how to make like a traveling pinfooter.
Hopefully, like, as we're rolling through COVID and coming to the end of it, God willing,
ideally,
knock on wood, I hope opportunities like that are more readily available than they might have been before. So I feel like there haven't been shows in so long. Maybe there'll be a little bit of a build-up.
I hope so.
Wow.
I'm not even sure how to do it, so I just want to talk to people and have, somebody will be like, hey, why don't you? And then there'll be some key piece that I'm missing. And
Yeah.
Oh,
wow, that's so interesting.
I'm also wondering this. So with the X-Acto boots, we were talking about this kind of smaller version that was.
I almost like that more.
Yeah, I do. I really love this because, like, I'm looking at this and like, I could almost see this being like its own small framed piece, or even sold on its own. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could, like, these are This is just
You
a
can see
beautiful
I'm
little
thinking
sculpture.
with that one too.
What's? Oh yeah. Like it could. So this was a study
Yeah.
for the boot.
Yeah. Well, it was before I knew I was going to do the boot.
Oh, right,
It
you
was
said that,
aced
of course, yeah.
stage before, and they were all scraps and stuff. Like this had been a skirt from a thrift store,
Oh wow.
and this we get bags of scraps, but then I don't throw them away. But a lot of other bootmakers do. Like they're not going to use the part of the leather that's from the belly because the fibers are too long, and I just save everything and try to use it in some way. So.
Yeah, because it's this one. This looks like.
So this is all made out of scraps. All this stuff was thrown away.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I especially love the kind of fur on the or what would you call that? Like the
Yeah.
mouth of the shoe.
This is
boot.
beading, this part. So
Oh,
this
it's
was on
beautiful.
a bag my sister bought at Marshall's, and then I wore a little bit, and she didn't want it anymore, so I took it.
It almost looks like deer fur.
Yeah, I don't
Beautiful.
know what it is. Some kind of hair on.
So I was gonna say too. This looks like almost like ethereal, the boot, while the
Yeah.
smaller piece looks more like a weapon, or like looks more like war torn and.
Well, the
It's more
rust.
raw.
Scary.
This is
Yeah.
more raw.
The rust makes it look so grisly. Like it makes me think of like King Arthur dragon scales.
Yeah, right.
kept-
Yeah, there's something
I kept
medieval about
spraying
it.
Yeah.
this too, like
Yeah,
the shinier
I
pieces. the
really
bottom
like how
ones are-
pristine it looks. The shine to it. It's beautiful.
Oh, I like the red heel too. That's
Nice.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's cool.
It's all part of the message somehow.
Yeah. It's so interesting how it's like a tool because it's a boot, but it's almost anti-functional with
Yes,
the
it's,
like
uh,
inverting the functionality.
Yeah, it's
That's
the
really
anti.
cool.
It's the anti-boot.
That would be kind of an interesting series too. Like imagine one where the blades run the inside.
I'm gonna cut them now. One inside out. Re-sew it inside out.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I kind of like them on the outside too because it's like a self-protective kind of thing of like processing this trauma and sort of making it into something else, but also kind of the distance between.
Yeah,
I
I like
don't
the
know. I don't know
inside.
what
It's
white
like
does,
that. The pit in Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah. Holy shit.
And your foot would like slide in, but then you could never get it out.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Wow.
This is amazing. I feel like I could talk about this the whole rest of this.
Yeah. And to get back to your history a little bit too, we talked all the way up about your experience at RISD. Was it at RISD after leaving the architecture program that you discovered the interest in leather and, and boots and stuff?
So I always was interested in shoes, but didn't recognize that, I guess. So at RISD I made a lot of shoes, but I didn't know how to make shoes really well. So it was like any project that we did, I somehow turned it into shoes. So I definitely had a shoe obsession in a way. And I really didn't know that was something you could do. It's like the same classic story you hear from from people. And then it was, I met, or a guy who owned a clothing store across the street from the architecture building told me about like a men's dress shoemaker because he had this fancy clothing store. He was like, oh, they're out there and they do trunk shows, and I'd never heard that term before.
Yeah.
We learned that recently as well.
But that was like the first time I knew that anybody did that. And he gave me his number, and I called him, and he basically was like, it's impossible to learn this anymore. Like I learned it from my dad, and we have like a cobbler repair shop in the front, but then I also make shoes on my own. And I, just growing up around here, like I only thought of school because it was just not anything I knew. Like you could learn things other ways. Like, and I say that all the time when I give my presentations. Like I could have learned to do what I do as a bootmaker by apprenticing with somebody, and you didn't have to go to college or to the shoemaking school in England. But like I thought that that's how you learn things. Like I didn't know that, there aren't trade schools for shoemaking, but there used to be.
Yeah.
And when I found this place in England, I was like, I have to get there and learn this. And then when I got there, it was like, oh, well, we teach you the A to Z basics, but you have to like actually apprentice with somebody if you want to take that route. Like most people did that in order to become designers who don't really know how to make shoes. And it takes a long time to learn these skills, but
it almost relates to like tattoo school. Like they'll teach you the basics of it, but you still should probably apprentice with somebody. Or
yeah.
Interesting.
We've talked so much about like different like you were saying earlier, lineage and but
Mentorship.
specifically relating to knowledge passed down from one artist to another. And it's like I didn't even think of that, but I've talked about it in relation to like oil painting techniques from like long ago, how there's like a lot of people who just don't know how to paint, like, you know what I mean, like they used to, and like, and it was because all of those skills were like given personally to apprentices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And were literally just like passed down in these like deeply personal and almost intimate ways, you know. And I think that's really beautiful. And there's something just so unique about working with this medium and in this world, you know what I mean? Because there isn't like, you're the only person I've ever met that does this. You might be the only
But
one.
that's sad. It's sad
Yeah.
too. You know, it's like they have really awesome places like the North Bennett Street School teaches old woodworking. And
I've never heard of it.
It's in the North End, and it's still there, and it has a few. I think they have bookbinding,
Wow.
furniture. Like just look at their website, and they'll show you. And I think
Yeah.
they've had
Shit.
different majors over time, but they that's a perfect place that would have shoe or bootmaking and keep that craft alive. And
Yeah.
they don't like. Nobody does that here anymore. You know, different
Wow.
people have tried, and hopefully somebody will be successful at some point. But it's definitely a craft that it's pretty invisible. It gets
Yeah.
looked over a lot. And so I do have an apprentice for the first time ever, which is
that's
really
amazing.
exciting. Yeah, and it's Mass
Wow.
Cultural Council funded
And
apprenticeship
that's
program.
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
Boston Artist Certification Cultural Council. Is that what you're talking about?
This is the Mass Cultural Council's Traditional Arts Office.
Okay, gotcha.
Traditional arts.
So it's
Oh.
they you have to apply with one person in particular. So we applied together, and then we're
cool.
awarded the apprenticeship. And in theory it's a 2-year thing, but it's 18 months because of COVID. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh
But
my
it's-
gosh.
So
That,
It's really awesome because it's truly like this transfer of knowledge that you were talking
Yeah.
about. Like
Yeah.
I'm finally getting to really show somebody because it takes that long to go over all these things. She comes 4 hours a week, almost every week, and we just, are making boots.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Something else, we've talked about this, actually we talked about it for a little while in an episode that isn't released yet, but we will soon, about benefits of mentorship versus college. Also, I think you said this, that a lot of college professors aren't in a position to mentor their students in the college format because it's almost a liability. And how there's a lot that schools don't teach you as far as how to actually market your work or where you're going to find a job afterwards or how to create that job.
They didn't have that at RISD at all.
They didn't
Not
have
at
it
all.
Leslie.
Mm.
I have
Yeah.
to say, like, it's been better in the last few years that they've been doing webinars. Like, that was new.
Yeah.
Like, so they'd send these things out, like, if alumni want to sign up for this is how to apply for a grant, or
Yeah.
this is how to find out how to do taxes if you're an artist, like,
Yeah.
new type things. But yeah, all of us who left are just sort of like, I think the attitude was, we're going to spend every minute of the education teaching you how to think and critique, and then in
Yeah.
theory self-critique, and you'll learn on the job.
Yeah. And then
Hmm.
what is the job after
Yeah,
you leave?
yeah, and it could be anything from
Art professor.
Yeah. Come on back.
Right. I'm also curious. Have you had an artistic mentors or like personal mentors that have really like pushed you in the direction you are now, or that have really helped you along the way?
Well, definitely the bootmaker was a mentor. We had a kind
Yeah.
of a precarious relationship, and he's very private, and I bullied him into teaching me what he did teach me, and I'm super grateful for it. So I try to respect his privacy, but
Of course,
not pipe
yeah.
on him very much, but he definitely gave me invaluable skills and knowledge. And he's in my mind a lot while I'm working. It's been more like peers that then became mentors. Like
Yeah.
peers that opened my eyes to things I just didn't see before. And I love that. Like I want to learn constantly, and I want
Yeah.
to see things in new ways. So I particularly became friends with this woman who founded Studio Habeas Corpus a few years ago. And then she's now in New Orleans. She moved her studio down there from Boston, or she was in Somerville. But she just made me think about slow fashion and materials and awareness of everything, like to whether the thread in something that may be made with organic cotton might be polyester, and what does that mean? And if it's organic cotton, like what does that mean? Like
Yeah.
was that responsible, or is it a tagline that just makes you feel good about something? Like she
Yeah.
really traces things in provenance in ways that also is in my mind all the time when I'm doing things, and this awareness of different it's not even just materials. She focuses a lot on materials, but also like who you're supporting, like whose craft you're supporting or whose business in every decision that you make.
That's really interesting. Because I feel like with something, well, actually, that's not even true. I was going to say with something like painting, it's a little bit more stripped down than that, but it really isn't, depending on like what store you're buying your canvas from or your paints from or what's in your paints. That is a whole ethical practice as well. So
yeah.
That's funny to think about.
Mm.
Huh.
Yeah, because something I love to think about too. It's like you even see it in like a lot of movies, you know, where in like hero's journey kind of movies, like the character always meets. I literally said exactly what I said right now in a different episode, but like you meet like Yoda, you know what I mean, or this like person, like this sage that like passes down like.
But it
some
also
like beautiful thing.
It sets you on your own path too. Like
Yeah.
she definitely got me thinking about certain things, and then I might branch off in little different ways than where she continues on her path. And I feel like I'm always putting, we all are, but putting puzzle pieces together, like figuring everything out. And I can't always articulate that I find very difficult. So I seek out podcasts, but I can't articulate like how all these pieces are going together, and it seems clear like 10 years before. But then, you know, who the hell wants to wait another 10 years in order to figure out what I'm doing today here? But I do a lot for my gut, like whether it feels right or not, and just do it.
That kind of feeling is the big motivator behind why we're even doing the podcast. It's just like almost having an excuse to come and talk to all these people about their work and really get these intense conversations. They're kind of exposing us right now.
Yeah, because oh god.
Just that, I guess, that it is almost an old way of thinking that, like, I think I learned a lot in college, and I think it really got me to take myself more seriously and understand, like, maybe there's potential.
Good thing it's all padded.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, understand there's maybe a potential for a career within art and that there are people who do this and whatever, but I think I've learned so much more in terms of the actual, like, just an old way of thinking about it, like what you were saying about, like, this person does one thing and maybe I'll do it slightly different. Maybe someone who met me would know it slightly different from that. And 10 years back, that's a whole school of thought. That's a school of art, which I worked at the Museum of Fine Arts for a while. That's what we were selling tickets to, is that, like, philosophy of this person taught this person who taught this person, or this person was in France on this day and saw this show probably, and that resulted in cubism or something. And I feel like with the school model of, like, you get this degree and then you go get a job and you work for this illustration company or something, like, that's a totally viable career trajectory, but it almost loses some of that, like, I don't even know, the passed down kind of, the lineage, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is a
The
shame.
soul of it. Because anybody with the technical knowledge can pass that technical knowledge. You can give that in a YouTube video. You know what I mean?
An illustrator too. I don't mean to disparage that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. But
You're gonna get the hot sun spotlight there.
Oh yeah, I have. I'm probably catching a tan. Yeah, sure. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of like that emotional like aspect of it, you know, because I feel like the most profound things I learned from a lot of the mentors I've had, well, the few mentors I've had, was like I can't like that kind of, it's like a version of friendship, you know what I mean, that doesn't, I don't know, that like it's
I feel like
rare.
One of my teachers at RISD was somebody I give that status to. And it was an architecture professor, and was definitely teaching more straightforward architecture, but still the feedback and the lessons learned, I look with that eye at everything I do. So it was like he didn't even realize he would be such a long-term mentor.
That's
and
really
I don't
cool.
keep in touch. It's like really from that time back then. But you know, my parents are like number one mentors. Like both of them, they're just really awesome people, and they've supported me at every step, no matter what, even when they're wacky decisions. And they're always there, and they always are just saying like, "You're great, keep going."
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's a type of mentorship that is just invaluable, that I didn't realize until I was exposed to people that didn't have that, and see how like painful that seemed to me, and I just took it for granted. But,
That's really cool.
You're the best.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Hippies.
That's another thing too, that like we've been kind of seeing a pattern of, that is a really beautiful thing in so many artists, and like, you know, you see it in books, or like I feel like so many artists I learn about, there's a person at the beginning, or when a time period, maybe, you know, I don't know, either in youth or at the beginning of something, like where you're not really sure, or like
You're like, I don't know what the hell. And there's always somebody who's like, do it. Like, jump.
Yeah.
Jump. You know what I mean? Like, for me, also, that was probably, like, I think my parents, in a lot of ways, though my mom, that, you know, maybe wished I don't know, went to nursing school or something. Like, still tells me I should do that.
Well, even my dad is like, I don't understand why you go to architecture school.
Right, yeah.
You're not an architect, you know.
Right.
I'm like, well.
Yeah, but supportive nonetheless, and
But
being like, just, yeah, just like do, I don't know, like that, yeah, that encouragement is so important. And like, it's a very sad thought, but a true one probably, that there are so many artists that could have been, that probably didn't have that encouragement and that love, you know what I mean? It is definitely a form of love, you know, but a lot of people that didn't get that. And I think, like, the more conversations, you know, that people have about this, and the more I feel like it becomes like an actualized named thing, you know, the more people will exist, the more artists will exist that actually that have that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which is why that peer-to-peer mentorship is so critical too, because sometimes maybe without even knowing it, you could be that person that does that for somebody else.
Probably, yeah.
Like, I would hope. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Jeez. What a beautiful thing. Huh. You know, it's something I think about, kind of unrelated, but I worked at, Theo knows this, but I worked at it was a treatment center, and it was addiction, but it was like a behavioral program for like adolescent kids. And there was this one 13-year-old kid that was there, and he didn't draw or do anything, but like I draw the same faces a lot over and over again, and I have a few that I could, like, that are basically like patterns at this point that I could draw a million times over. But I taught him how to draw one of them, and for like the whole rest of the day and the rest of the time this kid was in the program, he probably drew like 100 of them.
Oh, wow.
Like, he just kept drawing the same face over and over that I just showed him how to draw. I didn't. But yeah, and I obviously haven't heard from that kid ever again, because like that's how those places work. But I like to think maybe he's just out in the world just like drawing
You never know.
that face.
You never know, like, a little interaction
Yeah.
will be pivotal in somebody else's life.
Yeah, who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah, that kid probably, when he's a grown adult, probably won't remember my name or anything. But like, it's just funny to think.
Yeah.
But that was, I don't know, because I didn't do anything special or put any real effort
But it's sparked
in
something.
showing him how to draw this thing that was
Yeah.
basically like a, I don't know, as easy as drawing like a cartoon face.
Yeah.
Like, you could probably draw Spider-Man from your memory.
But to you, it might
Right.
have been easy and
Yeah,
commonplace,
that's true.
and it's
Yeah.
the first time it ever occurred to him he could draw something.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Aw.
I years and years ago, I shot a nail gun through my hand.
I did that too.
Theo did that.
So I shot my thumb to my palm like that.
Oh my gosh.
And I was super lucky. It was just like skin to skin. And
Yeah.
pulled it out. But my hand was all bandaged up right after. We're
Yeah.
not
Little
alone.
scar. I did it, like,
many
under my-
people.
Yeah. That's really funny.
My scar hand. I somehow hurt my left hand all the time. But
Shot the thumb to the finger though. That must have been.
yeah, I was doing blocking like in here, so it was like a piece like that.
That's
and
exactly
I
what
shot
I
it
was
like
doing.
that, and it just went like that.
Oh my god. Yeah. I did the exact same thing. Just like right through the. Wow.
But I
Walking is
so-
dangerous.
But I had my hand all bandaged up, and I happened to bump into my old high school math teacher from senior year, who
Oh my
I hadn't
gosh.
like seen in a couple years, and I was not a strong math student, but he was always super nice to me and helped me get through.
Yeah.
And he was like, what's up with your hand? And I told him, and I was kind of like a cool story. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I shot it through. And he like grabbed both my hands, and he went, Sarah, your hands are made to make beautiful things for us. You have to take care of them. And it was such like an odd thing to say,
Yeah.
and like to be holding with two hands at the same time.
Like,
And like my math teacher, and I was like, oh, that's so nice, thank you. And it was one of those weird like little pivotal moments that like I looked at my hands after, and I was like, are they? Like, why would he say that? Like, why? But then I turned out to be the super maker, and I think that like he knew that just from
Yeah.
being a grown up that spent every day with me for a year. And
Yeah.
and then it made me act more responsibly, like in
Yeah.
some goofy way that like a kid takes everything literally and seriously, like, oh, I need to take care of them now. Like, but
Oh, wow.
I did. I started like taking care of my hands deliberately,
Yeah.
and in a way that I find people when they like hit 40 from doing their hands is like, oh, now I need to start. But
Yeah.
I'm
Sometimes
almost
it's-
grateful for that one time, because at 20 something I started doing it. And
Yeah. Which probably saved you from having hand issues later on too.
Probably.
Or will in the
probably.
future. Yeah.
But
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Weird run-in and pivotal pivotal.
That's nice. Wow. That's so funny that you had the same thing happen. I wonder how common that is. Because I think
it's pretty common.
Probably,
for anybody
yeah.
who's used to nail guns.
Yeah. They're kind of scary.
Yeah.
That was the thing. My dad is a carpenter, and he owns a construction carpentry company. And I was working for him, this was last year, because of the pandemic. I was working in an art museum, and then my job was eliminated. So I was like, I'll do construction, I guess. That's fine. And I was like, I'll do everything, but the only thing is I'm scared of the nail gun, and I don't want to shoot my hand, because I'm right-handed. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen. He was like, oh, like, it'll be fine. You'll just take your time, whatever. He didn't have me use it for a couple weeks. Yeah, basically. He's like, don't be afraid of heights, just be afraid of falling. And I was like, okay, whatever. So very my dad. But a couple weeks into working for him, I started doing it. I was like, oh, I'm confident now. Like, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen. And then I shot my hand. And I was like, Dad. And he was like, oh, we're going to go. He just went to the hospital. But, yeah, I don't know.
It was a day.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
I called you and I was like, I shot my hand.
Because now I'm thinking, because didn't you said it was my art hand? Like you were
Yeah, I
all
did.
worried about that. So you were using a
They're
nail
both
gun
your
with
art
your left hand?
Yeah. That was bad.
You're
That was
shooting a
stupid.
nail gun lefty.
Well, I must have been, yeah. But it double fired. So I was doing blocking between two poles, and I pushed, because it has a safety on the front of it for anybody who hasn't used a nail gun.
Then it takes it off on the side and shoots it through the air.
Yep, yeah, that's what happened. It
Yeah.
shot once, I pulled it back, it hit the other thing, went forward again, which pressed the safety, and then it shot into my hand. It was holding blocking still. It went under my finger, so it was healed within like a couple days, actually.
Yeah.
But there was like a little scab, but it was like when I got my nose pierced. I don't know. This is totally unrelated to the interview.
No, it's good. It's good
The
information.
realities of,
Yeah.
The realities of trades work.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I said this at the beginning, but just to say again, this studio is like beautiful.
It
Does this
really
look like it's like a porch through the door? Is that like a swamp back there, or like a
It's
little
a marsh. It's just really wet from all that rain we had, and it has
Oh,
a
yeah.
drain well. So there's a river way back there, like
That's so
where that
pretty.
open tree line is, an old mill river, back where Shaw's is now. Down there. There used to be a mill.
Oh.
I know, but no, it's just marsh along the.
Yeah, it's
river
beautiful.
edge.
Little flowers and cattails.
Yeah, it's really great, and you can hear the birds. And one day I was like when this was just framed and there were no walls yet. I was spray painting out here because it was like
Oh,
I
nice.
immediately just started using the space. And,
Yeah.
there was like really loud rustling behind me, and I thought like I actually had like rooted fear, like somebody's going to attack or something, like because it was so loud. And I turned, and there was this huge deer with like the giant. And I've never seen deer in the 20 years I lived here.
Yeah.
In all that time, except for this one time, and it was like right there, just
Oh my
staring
gosh.
at me with the big rack. And I was like,
Oh
this is
my
so
gosh.
cool. But then I've never seen it since then.
That's cool.
But it's really beautiful and serene here. It's pretty cold in the winter.
I believe it.
I need to find a new heating solution this
Hmm.
winter. My little space heaters weren't cutting it.
Oh.
And it's not
Gotcha.
that the space isn't anymore, but the tools are too cold. So
Oh, that makes sense.
but like the
Mm.
quality of my work isn't as good because the tools are cold and then my hand, and that's like not
Yeah,
cool.
'cause
Like,
your hands
so,
are-
yeah.
Yeah, because like, too, the hand tools and everything I see around they look pretty unforgiving. Like your hands are probably
Yeah,
very calloused, I imagine, and
they're strong. My finger.
I believe it because
They're
like some of
strong.
these things look like.
So would you actually like to hear about bootmaking? Like how
I
boots are
would
made?
fucking love to. Yeah, that's funny. We haven't really covered it.
Aside from the last, so we
Right.
start with the last. And then there's this foundational piece. It's very similar to architecture. There's a foundational piece called the insole, and that's on the inside, and you never really see it. So we sometimes call like the thing you slide into a shoe an insole, but it's actually called a sock that covers the insole, which is the structural piece for vocab's precision. So this one already has an insole on it. So this is a veg tan piece of leather, and veg tan can be, wet and molded to any shape. So when you put this on wet, it will mold to the bottom of your last. So if you had, like a high arch, or the metatarsals have like a big divot there, you would cut that into the last and then form. So when you're really making shoes to somebody's feet, you really try and make them to somebody's feet, and you mark where like these bones are on the person, and
my
all
God.
the pieces like reflect what that foot looks like.
Do you have to make a last for each client?
Yes.
Holy wow!
Yeah. So I did learn last making, but it was shoe last making. So there are things, so shoemaking and bootmaking are different enough that they're two different disciplines, but and I can definitely apply things to it, but I'm not adept at making cowboy boot lasts at all. So I usually either buy new plastic ones and adapt them to the foot measurements and information I take, or I get old wooden ones and do the same thing. I prefer the wooden ones, but they're not always easy to find.
Yeah.
So you would then have the insole, and you cut this holdfast, and this is part of that resoling process, like that here. So shoes that are made now are glued. There'd be just a flat insole, and then the upper comes around and gets glued, and then a sole gets pressed on and either adhered or sewn from the side, or but these are made with this holdfast, so that when you stretch the leather around from the upper part, at that point, like, you put the sole on, but you could keep cutting the sole off over and over again, and all this would be still held together and sewn together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's super cool. So, like this one. This is one of my, sometimes if I am unsure of a design, I'll make a practice boot. So these like singles I have are practice boots. This was a fun one. Cause
I love the face
doing
there.
the face was fun to figure out.
That's awesome.
That was like definitely a back to
Holy
art
shit.
school.
You know what my grandmother gave me a few years ago?
A pair of boots with his face.
No, it was just a face, just like that.
So this
it was just a random leather face.
Cool.
With like rough edges. I wonder if it was meant for something like this.
I don't know. I mean, this
She
was,
found it.
This guy repaired stoves, and this is a fire fiend from 1890 that used to be on stoves.
That's
like
awesome.
cast iron stoves. And he sent me a picture of it and was like, I want this on the boots. So
That's beautiful.
I had a fun couple of weeks of just trying different stuff in order to make that.
So would you burn that in or carve it?
No, I made it out of wax, that red casting wax, and then made a hydrocal mold from it, and then I put the piece of leather, which was just plain, in like boiling water for a few seconds, and then put it in the mold and sandwiched it in a vise and let it dry, so that I could make like several tiles. So like the hairlines I then carved in after, but the big dips and high points of the hair relief were in the mold.
That's really cool.
And then dyed it, so it made the face darker and stuff. But yeah, it was cool. It was fun because first I tried stitching and it looked horrible, and then when I did this method, it was pretty cool, and we were both happy with it. He loves them.
That's awesome.
But
Oh, and that was like a.
this was the shit boot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then he also rode a motorcycle and did this thing, and when I did this, it was like, it looks like a clown shoe. It looks so bulbous and ugly, so that got reworked and like looked much finer, and the lines were more elegant, so I was really glad I made that shit boot. But this one too was a practice for a different design, but then I keep it as like a demo piece for sewing soles and how they get attached. So this and this strip is called a welt strip. That's what's sewn into all this, and that welt strip are sewn into here. So that if you wanted to replace the sole, you would pull the heel off, which is several layers of leather. They're actual real stacked pieces of leather.
Wow.
Not fake ones made out of masonite to charge you expensive prices for your boots that are fake. But you pull that off, and then you could take a knife and slit it through there and slit all these stitches and pull off the sole if it's worn in a big hole or in a certain way. Those boots we were talking about that you could replace over and over again, the sole, and then you would just stitch it back through the same holes to the new sole and put the heel back on.
Oh, wow.
So it's just, and you can do that over and over and over and over again because they're made to be repaired that way.
That's really neat.
So the shank area, there's a metal bar or nail here that supports the arch, and on either side of that there are these rows of wooden nails, so that you're just cutting the stitches in the front. Basically, it's like on some shoes it comes all the way to the back, but in cowboy boots it's only in the forepart. And yeah, so you make this whole part, the upper, separately. Got one here. So it's like a big loose leather sock.
Oh wow,
That's really cool.
That's like uncanny to look at.
Yeah, and like
Without the-
what's pretty cool about the history too that I've discovered when I look at the 10-footer history is that until those big mill buildings came and like women were allowed to work in them,
Yeah.
women did all of this part in their houses, like with their kids' help, and,
Wow.
and some weren't moms, some were just women who did it and sold the piecework to the shoemakers in these shops. So only men were allowed to work in these little shops, and they were shoemakers or bootmakers, and that term making is actually taking this and last and like bottoming it, putting in the insole and putting on the sole. So they only did that part basically.
Interesting.
And all this was done like dressmaking. Like you could do all this either by hand or with the sewing machine when those were invented, and that was all done like in a house as kind of domestic.
Yeah.
That's like cottage industry work, not this, which would have been professional shoemaking work.
That's so interesting that they were separate when the end product needed both components.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
super interesting. And I don't know what comes out of that, but I think about it all the time and I talk about it, and it bothers me. It bothers me that like I'm part of a tradition that I would have been barred from doing a long time ago.
Huh.
And yet for some reason when these big mill building factories came all over Massachusetts, they were just packed with women. They were like, and who would then not know how to make men work there too, but not know how to make a shoe from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Like they just did a heel all day, or you know, nailed the insole onto the last, and just hundreds and hundreds of those. And those processes got separated out into assembly line type work, and that knowledge is all lost. There were very few, and then no people who did it anymore.
Wow.
So if you see like old pictures and stuff, it's funny because you'll see a bunch of these like on pegs in the walls, and then
Like
they
waiting
would just,
to be...
just waiting to be bottomed.
Oh my gosh.
And to describe it, this is literally a boot with no bottom or sole to it. It's just like a floppy boot.
Yeah, floppy leather boot top that it almost looks like a Halloween costume, you know, when you get those
Yeah.
things that you put on and then
Like a
it's
wizard shoe.
and they look horribly floppy over your shoe. Yeah.
So it has sort of an overlap with the history of like fiber arts and textiles then.
Yeah.
Like a women's craft, quotation marks.
I wanted to ask you about that too, if you had any thoughts about like the dichotomy that some people put up between craft and art, or artisan and craft work or something, like, because to me it seemed just kind of silly. Or
I know that a lot of people talk about this stuff, and I'll listen to, you know, some lectures and things on that. I don't have an answer. I can tell you how I feel as being both. I definitely feel like I'm both, and I recognize that they're separate, and I know when, like, my craft is my skill at executing something, and when I'm making art, I'm very aware of it, and it's different from when I'm making other things, and it doesn't mean that it's superior or
Right.
it is different, and I don't know if that's something that people need to identify for themselves, but I can tell for myself that I know when I'm making something that's coming from a place of art, like I feel compelled to make it for some reason, which is different than making boots for people, and it doesn't need to be client work. Like these boots I'm making because I wanted to make a pair of boots based on this beetle that I saw at the Harvard Natural History Museum, and
that's awesome.
it's cool.
Beetle
and
boots.
Yeah, they're beetle boots in a different way. This one, it's got like a different pull, so it's like the head.
Ooh.
I was thinking like the head of it is the transverse way. This
Oh, that's
way.
so cool.
I love how
Instead
that
of-
heel looks.
And it's this is like
Oh, right, of course.
yeah, don't cut yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you.
This to me is still making a boot with a cool design. It's not necessarily art in the way that those are art.
Yeah.
The razor blade boots.
That makes sense. That's so cool to see something as removed as a beetle and to see a boot design in it or to be inspired by that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you know, that having said before that I had no history with the culture of bootmaking, like I love that there are floral inspirations and nature inspirations and those kind of things, because it just I love doing it. And it's exciting to do. But I definitely do it a little differently than some of the traditions have been.
Yeah.
But for better or worse, it's just my thing.
Yeah,
Do you
that's
have
cool.
a pair of boots that you wear around that you made that were specifically for you?
So those, the razor blade ones are made to my feet. But
Those fit. They
I
fit
can
you.
put them on. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But those red and black ones are the first full pair I made on my own when I was apprenticing. So those are my boots, and they're the only pair I have. So I if I go to any function or anything where I feel like I'll say I'm a bootmaker, and people immediately look at your feet, and 90% of the time I'm wearing like snow boots or these. But I'll wear those more and more just to
They're cool. I like
be my
them.
own advertisement.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then I have plans for 2 other pairs that I would love to make for myself, but I just haven't gotten to them time-wise. But
Yeah.
they're slowly in the works.
That's awesome.
So this is this one is slightly different in that it doesn't have that welt strip, so I won't sew the sole on. I'll just glue the sole on. That was
Oh.
just a design decision.
And that's an example of the piece molded onto the last,
Yeah.
removed from the last and installed into the boot, or is the last
The
inside of
last
there?
is still in there.
Oh, okay.
So the last will be in there until it's finished.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it stays in all the way to the end. And at this point, like I now need to glue these and last the front. I need to put this is a toe box for something else that I'm doing. It's just like an experimental
Sure.
R&D type thing. But a hard toe box will get put in there that fits the shape of that. So that's that hard toe protector part. And then the sole, and then I'll build up the heels one lift at a time. So you do it like one at a time, really big. This is like a cool sculptural part of the process too, because you make them really big, and it's this big blocky chunk as you put layer after layer after layer, and then you shape it as if you're sculpting. So you then like carve and rasp and shape it to, that like a deep undercut or curve for Cuban heels, or you could really do anything. You could like drill into it and
That's so neat.
so it's like this cool sculptural part at the very end. I love all the parts, but
Yeah.
I particularly like that one.
I didn't realize the heels were also made of compressed leather. That's really cool.
Yeah, they should be, and traditionally they were. And it's labor intensive, like everything. Like here's part of that got shaved off. So because it's so big, when you get to the breast of it, you have to cut it. See, that's all the rough pieces would have been there.
Oh.
You cut it off and shave it off, and you get that kind of classic
That looks so cool.
look
And it's
on the side.
it's glue? Bound together in glue?
It's bound together with glue and those little wooden pegs.
And there's a special kind of adhesive that you have to use for leather?
Oh wow.
Oh, those look cool.
You can use contact cement. I have two kinds, like a petroleum-based one and then a water-based one.
Cool.
There's also a paste you can use. This one's like a potato starch paste. It's harder to do cowboy boot heels with these because the boots stick out so, the edge of the heel, that rand it's called, sticks out so far that when you use that paste, there's no way to like clamp it in. Whereas shoe heels are tight into the heel's profile, so you can like peg them right to the edge and they'll hold it together. So it's easier to do these contact cements but they also leave like a little line, so you can design-wise play around with that if you're obsessive, like some of us can be.
Oh my gosh. Now that you've told me that's the heel is built from layer and layer and layer of leather. That looks, I can see, it's like grain.
Yeah.
That is
So this one,
gorgeous.
This one is unfinished. Like this
Ooh.
is.
Wow.
Can I touch it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh my gosh.
I had shaped it, but didn't.
That's so
didn't
cool.
finish it yet. So
Right.
at this point, I could. At this point, I would, if this were a finished boot, I would start smoothing this out, and you use glass mostly.
Oh wow.
You break off pieces of glass and then wet
Interesting.
it and then scrape and you get it like as smooth and it's almost like a mirror finish, and then you hot iron wax into it.
That is sick.
So you heat up your little irons and then melt it into the sides, and that's
So-
how you get that smooth, shiny. If you dyed it, it would look like a solid block, but if
Yeah.
you were leaving it natural, you still would get kind of that look.
Do you find a lot of people prefer the natural look, or do they like
No, most want
want the
black
dye?
if it's
Cool.
black if it's a darker boot, or dark brown.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Now, and this iron tool, this is like a wood handled piece with a big piece of metal at the end. And so, would you heat this up in like a fire or something?
Here's one that's natural. It's got a lot of wax on
that's
it. That's before I
beautiful.
knew what I was doing well.
Oh, okay. I'm like all of this like is blowing me away.
This is the little tiny lamp for
Okay.
heating up irons. Because you want them hot, but not so hot that it would
Like damage the
burn,
tool or
burn
something.
the leather. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then you have all different, like a lot of these tools I got, they're all old, and they're the same tools that people used hundreds of years ago.
Wow.
So they have different profiles for
And
different spots on the boot. So like this shank area, you'd want it really smooth, and so you'd use one more like that.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
then,
There's a little rib in it.
Are
depending.
these heated as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You can use them cold as well, but you would use them cold at one point and hot at another. It takes a long time to do all this stuff, so it's kind of cool, like the
Yeah.
progression of processes.
Are most of your tools antiques, you said?
A lot of them are. I don't know if most. Probably
That is
most.
awesome.
So most of my irons I bought like a lot on eBay from a old shoemaking place in France, and just got
Cool.
most of my irons. But then I bought in like one here or there that I saw. I was like, ooh, like that one I bought independently. I wanted that one. I go to Brimfield every once in a while. My crowning glory hammer.
Oh, wow.
I found at Brimfield.
That's gorgeous.
And this was like specifically, I upped my game when I got this hammer because most of the shoemaking hammers have this slightly rounded head.
Yeah.
So when you're hammering these, you would get that little divot because you have to hammer down, and this is slightly wet. And when I got this hammer, this one has that long curve so that when you're hammering in this area, the heel wouldn't be on yet. It's that perfect smooth profile, and when you do this part, because it's totally flat, you're not getting all those marks. And
Do you ever find tools like at an antique show that you didn't even know about? You're just like, holy shit, this is a shoemaking tool.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. This thing I bought also at Brimfield.
Oh,
the guy who was
wow.
selling it didn't know what it was.
Oh, and you're
it's
like,
a peg float.
yeah. And
So
you
it's
say,
a cut peg float.
oh.
So when you nail this part with the wooden pegs, they go all the way through and into the last. So so like you can see this where those little dots is where the pegs had gone through, and they stick maybe like 1/8 of an inch through. And then when you pull the boot off, I don't think any of these still have it. No, I already sanded them all down, but you can see them inside. Those little points would be sticking up, and you really need to file them down. So especially the ones with the really long shaft. There it is. This one I'd probably just stick my hand in with sandpaper and break them off and stuff. But you stick that in there, and then when you go back and forth, it breaks all those tips off, and then you sand it smooth. So cowboy boots are one of the few footwears where you don't put a sock in, like in shoes. Like this is a sock. That smooth piece of leather.
Oh, so the top of the nails would be exposed.
Would be exposed, yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
And then they're super cool in their function, and as they get wet over time, like if you're wearing them in the rain or whatever, the wood and the leather expand at the same rate and shrink again, so it still holds it all together.
That's really neat. Yeah. So it's a really kind of natural footwear too. That like almost it's like breathing around your foot.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep.
Wow.
Super, super cool.
I've never thought about any of this, but understanding the process and like the reason behind everything makes things like plastic and glue seem so disposable.
I know.
Jeez. I noticed you said that you bought a large lot of tools from France.
Yes.
Do you have you found that like there are more people using these traditional techniques or bootmaking in France, or like rather than America?
I think so. A lot of, like, if you just went on eBay and did a cursory search, there'd be probably a lot in England, Germany, and France, more so than here. And there's random stuff here. Some in Australia, too. There's quite a bit of shoemaking in Australia. But I do think because it was so obliterated, the handmade shoe craft here, that aside from cowboy bootmaking, it was so obliterated that a lot of that stuff is just long gone, or, like, lost in a corner of Brimfield with nobody knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And while it definitely suffered as a craft in Europe, there's still, like, it's just such a different system. There still were small places that kept handmade shoes going, so it wasn't as completely destroyed as a craft as it was here.
And to backtrack a little bit, it was obliterated through the factories and the mass production of shoes in America.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Huh.
And now even those don't exist.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, it's a cycle of industrialization and mechanization that killed itself.
Yeah. Wow.
That's fucked.
So when I do my little presentations, and I'll send you next time I'm doing one if you want to come see, like, at a 10-footer. They there's like always an old person that comes by and says, like, I worked in a point shoe factory, like putting on this or that, and it's like they're really old now. Like soon there'll be nobody who even knew that part of working in a factory making shoes. And
My dad's grandmother actually worked in the what was I gonna say, the shoe factory in my town.
Yeah.
Because we found an old ledger. I had a studio there, and they were cleaning something out, and we found a ledger, like a payroll ledger, that she was in it.
Ah, that's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, random. But yeah, have you like ever like come across any like equipment or shoes or anything from factories that were here?
So when I was at that factory at the studio there were these things everywhere. The lasts
so
were all over the place
I
on
bought a
shelves.
lot of lasts from Fitchburg.
Oh, cool.
A long time ago, which was just like a big, huge old mill building that had tons and tons of them, and I spent like a whole day dumping them out of these pallets, like trying to make pairs and lines. And,
Wow.
it was really early on, so I didn't really even know what I was looking for. I was just, so I have a bunch of them in my little empty coop over here. It's now filled with lasts. I don't know that any, I mean, I have certain like knives and things that might be stamped with like Ayer or Southbridge, I think I have something.
That's so cool.
Brockton.
Wow.
Brockton was a boot capital.
Yeah.
The last
So I
one
have
is-
heard.
So this is an indispensable tool. What's really cool about shoe and bootmaking too, of course, like the more tools like that hammer that are specific to a certain process make the quality better, but you actually only need very few hand tools, and then you could just do it anywhere. Like you need lasting pincers, you need a super sharp knife, which that in itself was like its own skill that took a while to keep my knives honed to really, really sharp. and you need a hammer, lasting pincers, and like you could literally go sit somewhere in the town square and
Wow.
make shoes.
That is so cool.
It is.
And just this is a little piece of trivia that I had no idea, but when I first was messaging you, I referred to what you do as cobbling. That's a
Yeah.
totally different thing. I didn't know that.
So even the word is obsolete. The word for
Yeah.
shoemaking is cordwaining.
Cordwaining.
Yes. And a cordwainer is a shoemaker. And
Wow.
I went to Cordwainers College in
Oh, wow.
England and nobody really knows that word anymore. But shoemaker or bootmaker would be more appropriate than cobbler, somebody who repairs, which is this awesome skill.
Yeah.
Although there's, this whole world of, they call it recrafting now, where
Yeah.
it's like cobbling at highest level because they just really do amazing things. But
Wow.
that world, I've been told, that by some of the people in it, they choose recrafter than cobbler because it still has a negative
Yeah.
connotation.
It's almost like blacksmith or like undertaker or something
Like old
an
versions of-
kind of archaic
Yeah.
kind of feeling to it.
Cordwainer's a cool word.
It
It's
is.
a good one.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is derived from? Like what that?
Cordoba, Spain, I believe.
Oh.
Like Cordoban leather.
Wow.
Cordwainer,
Cordwainer.
I believe.
That's cool.
You can quote me, because if I'm wrong, someone will hunt me down and be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I imagine the
But
the,
I do.
Yeah, artisan bootmaking is probably a small world.
Yeah, it's pretty a good world, though.
I believe it. Yeah,
I
this
met a
is
luthier
incredible.
in the Joy Street Studios in Somerville, and he's like, we don't talk to anybody like that. It's so critical, everybody in this world. He's like, attacking each other or stealing techniques.
Oh my
and-
gosh.
Holy
yeah,
shit.
and I was like, no, it's not
So
really like that. In bootmaking, everybody's pretty supportive. And, there's definitely personality differences, but where isn't there? But
Yeah.
as a community, it's at some point people realized like we had to sustain each other in order
Yeah.
not to totally disappear.
So you've heard that the
good.
luthier community is very toxic.
That's what I've heard. Word on the street.
That is
my
actually
gosh.
really funny.
The door was locked too. I had to be like, I'm a bootmaker. I have no luthier associations whatsoever just to be let in.
no luthier
Oh my gosh.
allegiance.
Oh wow.
Holy shit, that is so cool.
Oh man. We're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes already.
Yeah, this flew by, huh?
I know.
Also, I was wondering, what kind of wax are you using for the finish of the heels? Or is it just any type of wax?
I just have this, which is not like the best quality wax. It's Yankee wax. But there are definitely like a couple German brands that are good. But I'm like, I have this and it's fine. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
that's
go
what
buy
it's
the
meant for?
fancy wax. Yeah, that's
Wow.
what it's meant for. I'm not gonna go buy the fancy wax until I'm out because I'm not wasteful. But yeah, they come in sticks like this. I think more for like cobblers because when they would like polish shoes quickly, they do it on their machine. This is one of the machines I bought from a retired cobbler, but I don't use a lot of stuff on it. I basically use this.
Could you tell us what it is for? It looks like so for the listener, it's like about the size of a lathe.
Yep,
It's
it's a line finisher. So any cobbler shop would have some version of this. This is an old Landis, and it has a couple round sanding wheels on it. It has these are like flaps of leather that's what they would put wax on in order to wax the edges of shoes, but I don't use those. That's from the old cobbler. I don't use the brushes either. I do all my finishing by hand. But on the very end here, there's a burnishing wheel. I do use that.
Burnishing?
Burnishing. So it's just metal, and I'll use it for like the edges of, not so much the shoes because I do that or boots because I do that by hand. But if I'm doing like pieces of strips of leather like that, I would have burnished the edge. This is my practice piece, so on this one it's not finished, but I would have put wax on there and burnished it on that. Spinning really quickly, it would give it like a nice shine and seal the fibers up. And it does have these cutting things, but again, this is something a cobbler uses. I keep thinking I need to just cut this off because my space is so valuable in here. I gotta figure out how to cut that end off and get it out of here. But yeah. So I use these. This is specifically for cowboy boot breasts on the heel, to get some of the big chunks off, and then I finish the rest with a hand rasp on the pieces of glass.
That makes sense.
All of it you could do by hand, but a few times will.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, out of necessity probably,
just go quickly.
Or to
a little quicker on
preserve the strength of your hands too, probably, yeah.
Well, most cowboy boot makers also do the sole stitching with a big, you might have seen them, they're cool looking, they look like these big round green bugs. It's the same Landis green, and it's a big stitcher, a sole stitcher, so they will put...
I've not seen that, it sounds really cool.
They'll put like, the sewing, it's like an upside down sewing machine and move it all the way along.
Yeah.
I don't have an interest in that because I like the skill of stitching soles by hand. So it's less common. It's more common in high-end shoe making, but not, which I learned in England. So it's like I brought that small craft skill to my practice, which is less common in cowboy boot making.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how would you, is there a way that you would need to protect your hands to do that, to punch through the leather?
So you use an awl. You're never actually sewing with a needle through leather. So I have different types of awls. So this is this is an inseaming awl for making these type of holes. Get on there. So it's wide and it's got a kind of an oval sharp tip. So when you make the holes, it goes through, and when you have this leather from the upper wrapped up and around, which then was tacked with the nails, you just punch through that, and then you use, I make them out of guitar string, but you use this little needle type thing to guide it through. Some people use fishing wire, some people use boar bristles, and some people just use needles. Yeah. But so it's not hard on your hands in that way. It's hard on the repetitive motion. Yeah. But this cuts. It's got such a sharp front that it cuts.
That makes sense.
I'm curious about go ahead.
Oh, and then it's just like a different profile. See how that is different than this? It's straight and angular. So this is a sole stitching awl, and when you're doing this process, you're going into it this way, and then when you make your stitches, it does that like little zigzaggy thing because it's straight. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Actually, seeing you put that through the leather was like really satisfying. Like visually,
it's really satisfying doing these parts. So that leather is kind of hard and stiff right now because it's not wet. But all this you work at a state called mellow, where it's saturated with water, and not to the point where if you squeeze it, water would drip out. But it goes through pretty easily when it's wet, and then it's pretty hard when it's not.
Wow.
I'm curious about the modification of the last and the process with that. So the regular lasts are just white and new looking, but this one seems to have like leather and things put onto the outside of it, or.
So this was a new last. It's based off an old Krentler model. So this was a last somebody designed a long time ago I think they were in St. Louis. I'm not sure, but it was an old wooden last, and it had been scanned, and they mill it out in this plastic. But based on the measurements and information, I take like footprints and stuff from people's feet. You see what the characteristics of their feet are, and then I would glue pieces of leather on to push it out, bubble it out where I think that needs to be bigger on their foot. And then I put shellac on it just to keep it nice and smooth. But
it looks visually very cool just on its own.
Yeah. Some people use cork. I don't like the cork because it still has some give to it, but I think it's minimal.
So you have to literally create their footprint,
it's the negative
true
space
shape
inside that receives the foot. So in some places you want it to be like in the waist here, which around your foot, would be here. You can squeeze without having any pain, and you could really grip a foot that way. But if you were squeezing here where that bone is, it would hurt your foot. So there's
Oh
like
my
key
God.
places where you need to identify those, and that's why people have shoes that are ill-fitting sometimes. It's because
Yeah.
they try to fit a median range of people's feet with the last. But if your foot is even slightly wider, or that bone on your foot is slightly forward or back from how that last foot's designed, that like every shoe is going to bother you. Basically.
Yeah. So over time, that must be really bad for your feet to have shoes
people's
aren't.
feet get deformed and all kinds of stuff.
Huh.
But so it's really awesome to have shoes made to your feet.
Yeah.
Would you recommend any specific texts or books or like different resources for learning about this this world, or even the history of it?
The history of, I don't know. There's some kind of, they're how-tos, but you really would have to know some more than just using the book on your own.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Tim Skirm in Australia who wrote a book called Bespoke Shoemaking, and there are a few cowboy boot ones. I think it's Dennis McKinney. I have it here somewhere. Just like the A to Z on cowboy boot processes, but then there's not a lot of depth into each one. It's a good like reference when you're starting out to remember the order of operations.
Gotcha.
There's
Wow.
a guy in Oregon named D.W. Frommer who sells books on bootmaking, like a few different types of boots, and those are very in depth. But again, you would still like, there's so many skills involved. Like even just cutting, like you could really hurt yourself if you're not cutting well. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways you need to cut leather that you're just going to learn by somebody showing you how to do it
Yeah.
correctly. And it's
Yeah.
not that people don't have different ways of doing it. Like I'm very much like take in everything and find the best way for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's definitely ways that you can do it that are wrong that would put your hands in danger or
that
the
makes
process
sense.
in danger.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely is. Well, the mentorship and the apprenticeship and the actual learning is definitely wow. What a cool thing.
Yeah.
I literally I never have expectations, but like this is like I had absolutely no clue what I was going to learn today.
I know.
But this has exceeded any expectation that I could have had.
I'm so glad you came.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much for having us.
This is like, cause
I enjoy your podcast enormously.
yeah, thank you.
And I
This is
hope that
awesome.
you continue to just do your own conversations, like interspersed, because those are so...
It's very validating.
They're so different, but they're so important. I don't know, I feel like you're figuring out stuff in my own head, and you do that more when you just talk to each other than
That's so
talking
interesting.
to other people.
That's so.
We've been talking about that specifically a lot recently because we've been trying to book more interviews, which has been so fun and so enlightening.
It's
but we were
rewarding.
like,
Yeah.
we were wondering if that kind of content was something anybody cared about. Or like,
Yeah,
You should
because
get grants for this. You should be being paid for
I would love
for this.
that. That would be awesome.
that
to
would be fucking awesome. Yeah, we would definitely love to do that. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
got the. We have had some because we didn't ever really intend to do any kind of like service, like documenting artists that don't get that was never really like, I think that's cool to do, but that wasn't really, that's just been happening kind of by accident.
Yeah.
Just because we're not looking for people that are I don't know.
Underground or
It's just something, it's nothing like that, but it's like we're just following our hearts. Just what we think is really cool. Like,
Yeah.
and this is like the fact that it's just led us to
You guys
I don't-
wanna
I don't
stay and
remem-
working here for a couple weeks. Keep me company.
what the hell? I would try it. I would definitely there's probably so much more information that even if you did like workshops or something, that'd be cool. There's probably too much.
Well,
Maybe,
at some
I
parts,
don't even know, but-
I'm just still strapped for time. Like I
Sure, yeah.
like the long plan will be just to do more and more. But
Yeah.
but a few of my friends are like, you should definitely do like a Patreon type thing where you're
Oh,
going
yeah.
over any one of these Instagram posts like way more in depth, and like, yeah, it's a great idea, and then I have no idea how to even
Yeah.
get started doing that.
Or even time lapses, like watching you do what you're doing would be so
I do
cool.
a few short ones, but then I always just want my phone. So
Yeah.
Right.
I feel
You know
that.
what is becoming, what is really seriously on the rise on the internet is like Twitch streaming and stuff, which is not, I don't do it, but there are a lot of Twitch streamers with insane amounts of people watching for like hours and hours and hours
Just sitting
of
in the studio with
of
them.
just boring live content. So like imagine there was just like a camera just,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I bet people would watch that.
I
That would be wacky. You would need a lot of like emotional
Or
and
just get a
mental endurance to do that.
Dedicated
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
It'll
That'd
see
be
how much
crazy.
I go on Instagram though at the same time.
Yeah, right. They'd watch you. Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah, no, it's really validating too to hear your feedback about our show.
Yeah,
I
thank
didn't
you
even
for
like.
listening. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's actually something we've been talking about is not like the viewer definitely. Glass, right? The viewer probably wouldn't even notice, but we were thinking of like or planning for a bit of a hiatus from the interviews because we're been worried that we've been losing time on our own, not only our own practices but also our own conversations, like you were saying. Yeah, so it's been kind of interesting to. Because we're still figuring it out. We've been doing this for like 7 months, or 7 or 8 months.
Very nascent.
That's all cool though. It's part of the beauty of it.
Yeah. So, what the hell? Yeah, we're just letting it rip, and we're just gonna ride it out until it, I don't know, turns into something, or I don't know, falls apart underneath us.
Whatever.
Fuck it. But yeah, I don't know, man. Just the fact that we just doing this and it's brought us to a custom cowboy bootmaker in Wakefield or something. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should bleep that out or something. Your location. I don't know.
No,
I have no idea. But yeah, just the fact that this brought us here is like fucking amazing to this beautiful studio. I am like so jealous of the setup you have here. Yeah.
It's a good one. I'm lucky. I'm lucky in many, many ways.
Well, I mean, it looks also like this is the result of a lot of fucking hard work.
Yeah.
So I mean, luck versus like just like competence and knowing what you want and
We're like
building it.
1860 with computers, but
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
but no, like my husband and I are both really hands-on in every way. So
that's sick.
we have like this great life, but a lot of it we do. So it's not like I think it's not as attainable if you have to hire people to do certain things.
Yeah.
Then it makes it more difficult, especially when you don't have a lot of money. But
Yeah.
Well, holy shit, yeah. I guess we're at 1 hour and 51 minutes. So this is
are we breaking a record here?
I think we are,
We're
actually.
definitely in the like, because I think the highest one. Okay, so the highest one we've done so far hasn't been posted yet, and it's 3 hours. We did a 3 hour.
3 hours?
Yeah, that was one with Raya. That one is really about art, though. It was just
We were just talking.
it was just a time. Anyway, but yeah, holy shit. I guess we'll wrap this up. I feel like I want to go forever, but yeah, I guess so. Well, where can the people find you? Do you have anything upcoming that you would? It's okay if there's nothing also, but
well, I have that piece at the Harlow Gallery in Hollowell, Maine. It's an art
wonderful.
gender exhibit, and it's up through September 11th, which was exciting.
Nice.
Also to go discover a new little town in Maine. And now for boots, I mean, people just hire me, and it's all been word of mouth, which is weird. Like when you spend so much time doing your Instagram, and I have it double posted to Facebook. I don't like maintain the Facebook thing, but all the stuff goes there
Facebook's
too.
a pain in the ass.
I know, but a lot more people see it. Like, but still, like nothing's come from any of that. It's all been word of mouth from like really random personal interactions. But yeah, if anybody wanted to hire me to make boots, check out. I have a website too, which is terrible, but I'm in the process of because I did it myself and not my forte. But it's like a portfolio online, basically. But
Cool. And what would the URL for that be for anybody listening?
we'll
put it in the bio too.
Yeah, we could just they'll know. They'll
Okay,
fucking
all right.
find it.
We'll put it in there.
Saboteuse.com.
Wonderful. And if I need a fucking pair of boots, I know where I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
So, because it's, but I have never bought a pair, but I have always wondered if I would look good in cowboy boots. I've thought maybe it would be a cool thing to have in the arsenal.
I want a pair that looks like the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, when I was a kid, I just wanted to look like Clint Eastwood.
Oh, really?
Like now, I could basically make everything except the hat that he's wearing.
That's so awesome.
Oh, wow.
Like a lifelong aesthetic influence.
Yes. I wanted to be him. So.
Oh.
I could see it. Yeah, from the shop. Oh my gosh.
It's funny when you look back on stuff like my thesis, just because it was Rizzy, so you could do whatever the hell you wanted, really, if you could talk it through. But my thesis for architecture was I made a film about a mason that is like a skilled mason in brickwork, but then has no purpose in this world anymore because everything's brick veneer. Nobody hires true masons anymore. So it basically was like about a craftsman that is just obsolete in the world and struggling with that. And I just thought it was like really cool, and I wanted to make it. And it took like a year and doing it with a small film crew and everything. And then now when I think about it, like it only hit me like a year ago. I was like, oh my god, that's like me. I made like me 20 years from now because I didn't have any craft skills at that point in time. And like something about my brain was like, and then I kind of like bullshitted my way about like designing space or experience, which kind of it was, but really I just wanted to do that. So I like.
Did you say this was a film?
Yes.
Is it available online anywhere?
No, I did. It was 16 millimeter. I did like make a DVD copy at one point.
Gotcha.
I don't. I was actually worried about I thought about putting it online, but when you're in art school, like you do all the music stuff without understanding copyright at all.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot,
right.
like there's a lot of music in it that like I actually put like all the information from the CDs on at the time on it, and I'm like, you totally can't do that, but nobody told us, and I do worry about that, so that's why I never posted.
That makes sense.
And it's like really inaccessible art school film.
Of course, yeah.
All symbolic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, goddamn.
Good stuff.
This has been fucking beautiful. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I feel like this has been a privilege. This has definitely been. I feel like this was definitely rare information and a rare interview. So.
Thanks for helping spread the word.
If we contribute at all to the furthering of your discipline here, I mean, that'd be fucking cool. So the listeners.
Out of my ideal building here.
Yeah.
And talk to people again.
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll wrap this up, even though I don't want to. Yeah. Fuck it. Boston Art Podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Link shit below. All the shit's below.
It will be.
we're only articulate in the middle of the episodes, never at the beginning or end.
That's so true.
Yeah. All right.
Thank
Fuck yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.